Kozol, it's now been 41 years since that National Book Award, right?
That's right.
1968.
That's right, yes. Intimidating to me to think of.
It was your first nonfiction book.
It was my first serious book, that's right.
What was it like to win the National Book Award for your very first try out on nonfiction?
Well, it was very intimidating because I was so young.
How old were you?
I don't know, around 28 or 30, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you, it was a blessing for me in one way that my mom and dad, I must say, they just passed away, both of them actually, at the age of 102. But they were very nervous when I'd gone to Harvard, and by some amazing mistake, I won a Rhodes Scholarship. And they were really nervous and kind of scared when I gave up my Rhodes because I found Oxford boring after Harvard. And I went to Paris, and I just made friends with older writers there. Met Richard Wright and William Styron there. They sort of mentored me. Then I came back to the United States, and instead of returning to the university, to Harvard, they expected I'd become an English professor. Instead, I was swept up in the civil rights movement, and I went off to Roxbury. Roxbury is the black community of Boston, and ultimately moved into the community and became a fourth grade teacher. So they were really scared, as any parents would be, I think. Not that I was in the black community, but just they kept saying, my father especially, my mother was better, but my father at first kept saying, you're squandering your education, you know, a Rhodes Scholar teaching fourth grade in the inner city. And so, in a way, when I wrote Death at an Early Age, which was about that first year as a teacher, suddenly it redeemed me in my daddy's eyes. And even when it was published, he wasn't sure whether he was going to forgive me. But because in a sense he'd gone to Harvard, and he was at the Harvard Med School. And so, you know, he felt, in a sense, I'd turned against everything he stood for. And he was worried that I was going to ruin my life. So when Death at an Early Age won the National Book Award, I think it was the first time that Daddy felt I was going to survive, that I was okay.
But before Death at an Early Age, you had a novel, which
I
you
wrote
didn't
it.
mention.
That was when I was an undergrad.
I have a
at
copy
Harvard.
of it.
Oh God!
It's hard to find.
I know.
The Fume of Poppies.
I call it. What's that term they used to use? A piece of juvenilia.
Juvenilia, yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible, stupid little book. I wrote it in my senior year at Harvard. I had a wonderful English professor. I don't know if you love American poetry, you'll remember him. His name was Archibald MacLeish, and I studied.
He also the Librarian of Congress?
He was,
yeah?
Undersecretary of State also, and but had lived much of his life in Paris, bringing Scott Fitzgerald home drunk at the ends of long evenings, and MacLeish, he really kind of adopted me as an undergrad at Harvard. So I had him for 2 years. But in senior year, he took me aside and he said, Jonathan, this was like November, you know, you're not going to get an A because you haven't really produced much this year. Because you're supposed to write a lot. So during Christmas vacation, I spent exactly 12 days, and I wrote this absurd little romantic novel, and I got my A, and I thought that was the end of it. But by accident, it actually got published, and I immediately put it out of print.
You put it out of print.
I did.
An author can do that?
Yeah.
You just pulled it?
Well, it it survived for about a year, and then I convinced my publisher that it was a silly book, and I didn't. Nobody has the right to publish a book that they wrote in 12 days during Christmas vacation.
I want to ask you, so many of your books are about people. I thought we'd just kick off by asking you to just talk a little bit about a few of the people in your books. Let's start out with Pineapple.
Yes.
Who is Pineapple?
Pineapple is this wonderful little girl whom I met in the South Bronx. I've been working in the South Bronx now with South Bronx kids for about 25 years. I met her about 15 years ago in the middle 1990s, early 1990s, when she was in kindergarten. And she was just adorable, very smart, very bossy, a little plump. And I remember, like, even in kindergarten, when I was trying to help her with her arithmetic, because teachers always put me to work when I visited classes. They always trick me. They always say, come and visit my class. And then when I get there, they say, don't just stand there, do something, You're supposed to be a teacher. So I was trying to help her, and she looks at me and she says, you're standing on the wrong side of me. And because she wanted me to just lean over her left elbow. So I moved, And that pattern continued. When she was in 4th grade, she got so bossy with me that she got worried about my social life and started trying to fix me up with her teacher. 5th grade, she looked at this suit. See this suit I'm wearing? This is the same suit I used to wear every time I visited her. And she did not like the fact that it was always the same suit, and black, too. So she said to me once, she fingered it with her hand like your grandmother might do if you were wearing something that looked shabby, because it is kind of ratty. You can't see on TV, but it is. And she said, Jonathan, is that your only suit? And I said, no, I have 2, but they're both the same. So she looked very concerned. I remember we were sitting face to face in little chairs, and she folds her arms. So she were like the school social counselor, and she says, Jonathan, do me a favor. It's just like my mom would say. She said, someday when you're in a nice part of town, go into a good store and get yourself a good new suit. And so she was so commanding that I obeyed her. And I went to Brooks Brothers and I bought a new suit just to please her. But to her dismay, it was the same black suit again. So we had another counseling session. This is the end of this little story. And she folds her arms again, and she looks at me. I'll never forget this, because she was pretty mature now. She was 5th grader. She said, Jonathan, I know you get depressed sometimes to see the way we have to live. But you don't always need to dress in black. I loved her for telling me that. Here she was, a little girl in the part of the South Bronx where that book, my last 5 books have taken place. That book was Amazing Grace. That's the poorest urban neighborhood in the United States. So there she is, living in dire poverty in a grim building. An awful building. The elevator never worked. You had to walk up 8 flights, and with so much desolation around her, and she was worried about me.
That's not her on the cover, is it?
No, she's on the cover of that book, of Ordinary Resurrections.
This is Pineapple.
Yeah, and that's actually her bossing me. You can see. Look at it. She's bossing me.
How old was she? Would she have been then? What,
she was
6,
about
7?
6, 7 then, yeah. And she got worse as she got older.
How old is she now, and what is she doing?
She's a wonderful success story. And I'm so proud of her.